Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you today. So, I'm going to be talking about evidence-based programs and giving you some of the inside scoop of, well, first of all, there's lots of different definitions that people use of evidence-based programs. So, we're going to dig into that. And we're going to talk a lot about what you can look for when you're trying to select your own programs. So, with that, I just want to give you a little bit of background about me. I actually was a prevention scientist at Iowa State University, where I did a lot of this work on training and technical assistance around helping providers understand what evidence-based means. So it's something that I did, was involved in multi-component intervention approaches and providing training and TA to state and community implementers. But now I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I actually get to implement more evidence-based programs. So I'm like more on the ground here, and I've enjoyed learning a lot about how to do this from doing it myself instead of just helping other people do it. So it's been fun to kind of transition. So I have that perspective from both angles, from the higher up and then from the actual doing. Okay, so what we're going to cover, we're going to go over the prevention science definition of evidence-based, how programs become evidence-based and who reviews them. It's like this mystery of, we're always told, use evidence-based programs, use evidence-based programs. Who is determining what becomes evidence-based? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you, as I mentioned, some of the inside scoop on what should you be looking for when you are going to try to determine what programs you want to implement in your communities, and then some other implementation considerations when you're selecting evidence-based programs. All right, so just to kind of get us on the same page and just kind of thinking about this, there's a lot of people that are, use the terms, research-based and evidence-based. I hear it a lot in my work. A lot of my colleagues use them interchangeably, or they'll just throw in evidence-based because they've done an evaluation on something that they've developed. So it is important to understand the label that you use does matter, because we don't want to confuse or mislead other people. The people being our participants, the people that we're serving, or agencies. They should know what they're getting. If they're programs that have been rigorously evaluated and meet that standard that we're going to talk about, that's when we get to use that term. And basically, the whole reason for it is because it tells the agencies and the participants how confident they can be that what they're getting is actually going to produce the desired outcomes. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's really what it means. Okay, so it's really important that we start off talking about research-based, because research-based is at the foundation of evidence-based. So in order for something to move through the evaluation process, it has to start with this research base. So I want to go through that. So first of all, research-based means it's based on a theory. So usually in prevention, it's based on a health promotion, health education, or behavior change model, a theory. So we understand, like, if I change these knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, it's going to lead to an intention to change a behavior or to not engage in a behavior in the case of substance misuse. And that will lead to longer term delayed initiation of substance use. So also it's going to use the research on what are the key determinants of the issue being addressed. And when I say determinants, I'm talking about those key risk and protective factors. So what do we know are the most central, most aligned with, or correlated, most highly correlated risk and protective factors to the particular outcome. So if it's alcohol use or binge drinking, for example, what are the most related risk and protective factors for that specific outcome? Okay. should have a logic model. I'm going to show you some examples of those in a little bit. We also call this mechanisms of effect. Is how does the program work? When the people develop the program, they need to have a clear idea of like, well, I'm going to teach people this, this, and this, and then that's going to lead to these, these things changing, and then that's going to lead to the longer term outcomes that I'm interested in. So, and again, like I said, I'm going to show you some examples of that. The really important thing to know about research-based is that it might or might not have been evaluated. It honestly has nothing to do with the evaluation of the program. It's all about what is at the foundation of the program, okay? So that is why it is super important for anything that's going to be evidence-based that's going to go on to get evaluated. We want it to meet this standard first, okay? All right, so based on research does not mean has been researched. So just remember that. Okay, so what makes a program evidence-based? Excuse me. All right, so I'm going to have you guys put some ideas in the chat. What to you makes a program evidence-based? Okay, proven. Data peer-reviewed by multiple professionals. Yep. Yep, research already conducted. Okay. Okay, focus groups. Okay. Data. Okay. All right. Okay, there's definitely going to be probably some of all of those things. Research done and data analyzed and peer reviewed. Okay, enough evidence, amount of, okay. All right. Okay, I like that one. There's enough evidence, the amount of participants reporting the same outcome. That one really is important, and we're gonna talk about that later. And measurable. Okay, really good answers, guys. Um, Okay, yes. Statistically significant results. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so this is kind of the broad strokes that basically kind of summarize what you guys just said. So first, it's been rigorously evaluated, often using a control group comparison through a randomized controlled trial. Okay, so that's kind of the gold standard. Produces the desired outcomes using validated measures of the targeted determinant. So I know exactly what I'm trying to change, as I mentioned, through my program design process. And so my outcome, my evaluation shows that I've actually done those things. So if I'm increasing, for example, if it's a family-based prevention program and it's supposed to be about, parent-child communication, parent-child bonding, and those are part of how I get my reduced substance use later on, then I need to see changes in those particular outcomes because that's how I'm creating the delayed initiation of substance use in their kids. I want to see that these positive effects are sustained for some time. So, it's not like, okay, the day that I did the survey, I get these effects, and then next week the kids have initiated substance use. That would not be something that we would want, right? So we want to make sure they're sustained for some time. And again, I'm going to go into the details of all of this. And then, as some of you mentioned, the evaluation has been replicated with different groups of individuals, and we see the same positive findings. So again, broad strokes of evidence-based. All right, so like I said, more detail to come on this. So some of the benefits, and you guys, I'm sure, already know this, but why do our funders, why are they always saying, you need to use evidence-based programs? This is why. They're packaged and ready to use. We often get all of the learning materials provided when we pay for it. Yes, I like that return on investment. We're going to talk about that too. Often training and support is available from the developer. We know that it's feasible to implement in the time frame it specifies, undergone more rigorous evaluation, and we talked about that one. When one uses it as designed or with fidelity, and with the intended audience, which is also really important, they can feel confident that they are going to get similar results to the research that was conducted. So we're able to compare apples to apples because it's standardized. Okay. Oftentimes, our evidence-based programs are designed to address a more complex behavior. or behavior change, as opposed to simply just, teaching people that, like drugs, teaching kids like drugs are bad. Like, here's the reasons why drugs are bad. It's more than that. They need to have more than knowledge. We talked about addressing those determinants or risk and protective factors. I have never heard of an evidence-based program that only has one session. So evidence-based programs to address those complex behaviors or address those multiple risk and protective factors, they have got to have multiple sessions with content that builds intentionally on itself. So a lot of times we start with some foundational skills in the beginning of the sessions, and then it builds and gets builds on that, and then teaches youth or parents, whoever our intervention is for, our audience, like how to apply those skills then. Designed for a specific audience, meaning, if it's for it's often designed for a specific age group. So for example, if it's for elementary students, that doesn't mean it's going to work with high school students. So that one's really important. It's going to be developmentally appropriate. Standardized materials, we said, standardized delivery process. It's like some of them use videos, some of them use workbooks. It's standardized. So every time a student or a participant gets the information, it's coming from the same materials. We have limited ability to tailor or adapt it. For some people, this is a benefit. For other people, this is a thorn in their side. It's like, oh, but I really don't like this activity, or I really want to, change this. With an evidence-based program, we're told, don't do that. You don't know how you can affect the fidelity of the program. We never know what we might be doing if we make changes. And ideally, they're informed by instructional design principles. So they've had somebody that was involved in the design helping with that aspect of it. All right, so that's the benefit. So what does it take to become evidence-based? Let's jump into that a little bit more. How do programs become evidence-based? Do the program developers just decide that their program is evidence-based? Absolutely not. They do not. So the way it works, a designation of evidence-based is given by a third party, often an external review group, such as a university, a state or federal agency, might be a foundation, or some external entity with prevention scientists, prevention researchers, who are able to understand the research, the findings from all the studies. They do that hard work for us oftentimes, but they're not always perfect, and things do change. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that later. So we don't decide that. I don't get to develop a program and then do some evaluation and then say, okay, I have an evidence-based program, and then start touting that and like getting it out there to everybody. It doesn't work that way. Although I have seen people do this. And this is also why you have to be really careful about websites, for example, because you might do a search for evidence-based programs and you come across some programs and they seem amazing. And they say, this is an evidence-based program. Well, what definition are they using? By whose standard? Who they don't get to decide that. So we're always looking for somebody that has determined that. So some examples of entities that do this review, we're going to talk a lot today about blueprints for healthy youth development, but there's some other reviewers. There's evidencebasedprograms.org. There's California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse, and then there's the Clearinghouse for Military Family Readiness as well. And their reviews are actually not just for military families. Something that I found that might be useful to you is actually from a PTTC, and this is talking about if you see here on the contents, you'll see different entities that review. And so you can see we have blueprints is kind of the gold standard that most of us use, but there's other ones here. WASIP, the Washington State Excellence in Prevention Strategy list. They also do economic analyses, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. You can see a bunch of different registries here. So I have the link down there, but this is the name of it: Online Registries Guide to Evidence-Based Substance Misuse Prevention Programs, Practices, and Policies. So that is something that you can check out. It'll tell you about each one of those. Each review group has slightly different criteria. but there are some common standards, which we're going to dive into next. Okay, do you guys think that all evidence-based programs are created equal? What do you guys think in terms of the strength of the evidence? All right, I see no's. Okay, all right. All right, and you would be correct. Okay, so let's talk about some of the examples of this. So with blueprints and um, so has everybody heard of blueprints? I know you can't tell me, but like, can you give me is this something? Okay, I'm seeing yeses. Okay, fabulous. Okay, so blueprints is in prevention. It is viewed really as the gold standard. So if you haven't, then it's definitely something you want to check out. So I'm going to be focusing a lot on that today, so you'll understand it a little bit more and how it works. Okay. Now, Blueprints is just one of the entities that reviews programs. So like I said, there's other ones out there. They're all going to use some sort of a similar model. A lot of them have a tiered structure for determining like what is the level of evidence for this program. So in the case of Blueprints, they have three tiers. They have promising, model, and then model plus. And I'm about to tell you what makes them get each of those designations. Other ones you might see, um, they might just say like level one, level two, level three. They might have model and they might just have model and promising. So they don't have a model plus. That was actually a new thing that I think Blueprints added not too long ago. So if you go to the Blueprints website and you do a search for the program that you're interested in and it doesn't show up there, it means it's not in one of these three categories. Okay. Now you might look it up on in a different database of evidence-based programs and it shows up as promising or model. It's very interesting. That's because they don't all have the same criteria when they're determining what goes where in what category. So a program that Blueprint says like it doesn't meet the standard for being even promising, another entity might feel their evidence is strong. So there's some subjectivity in their determination. So there's not hard and fast across all lists, like it's going to be the same. Okay. So that's why when sometimes our funders ask us, like, if they're saying, okay, are you using an evidence-based program and what list was it on? This is what they're talking about. And they might ask you, like, what level of evidence does that program have? And so this is what they're talking about. So some of the key ingredients has a research-based program design. So that's what I covered in the very beginning. So it has that theory and it's based on what the research tells us those important risk and protective factors are. It has a readiness for dissemination and the evaluation shows it works. Okay, let's talk about each one of those a little bit more. Those research-based program characteristics, it has a clearly identified targeted outcome. So I know exactly what this program was designed to address. Some prevention programs are very general. They're like, it's all substance use. They didn't have a specific substance in mind. Others do. So for example, there are programs that are specifically on alcohol use and that's their focus. But if it's a family-based program that's just focusing on improving family dynamics and maybe how to help kids deal with peer pressure, they're not addressing a specific substance. So when they do their evaluation, they're evaluating all the substances to see what the effects were. So it has a clearly defined targeted outcome. So it might be all substances, it might be one specific substance, clearly specifies which risk and protective factors are targeted, the intended audience, and then lays out how they are designed to create the change in the outcome. So here's an example. This is from Guiding Good Choices. This is an evidence-based substance misuse program that focuses on family-level risk and protective factors. So what you'll notice here, and this comes from, I have my like where I found these on the bottom, so you guys will be able to see that if you're interested to go there. Blueprints does have a lot of logic models for the programs. They view that as a critical piece in like making sure that whoever developed this knew they had a plan for how this was supposed to work, and the research, when they evaluate the research on the programs, backs up that design. Okay, so let's look at this really quick. If you look on the left, you see it says universal families with children aged 9 to 14. That's our target audience, so they're specifying who this is designed for. We go over one column and we see the theory. The theory is it's a theory or sort of like basically getting at those risk and protective factors there. So when we have positive parenting skills, we're going to reduce risk for problem behaviors and we're going to protect our children. And then decreasing risk factors. Poor family management has been shown to be an important risk factor for substance misuse, as have when parents have favorable attitudes towards substances or substance use. Higher family conflict, we know, is a risk factor. Kids that are more rebellious, having friends that engage in problem behaviors, and so on. Bonding to family is one that is a protective factor, and then rewards for positive involvement interactions, consequence for antisocial interactions. Okay, so you can get a feel for now. This is what the program developers, this is like, okay, this is what we're going to target in this program. So in the next column, you can see what they're doing in the program. It tells you it takes place over 10 hours of parent participation in 2-hour workshops. They have a workbook and they have video-based discussion, so it's telling you what the mode of the delivery is. And then they give you a breakdown of each session. There's 5 sessions, so they tell you what happens in each one. Now, you should see clearly how the sessions and what's taught in the sessions map back onto the risk and protective factors. That's part of the program design process. So what are the immediate outcomes? We see that over there. You can see that parents are supposed to learn and practice those parenting skills that they're being taught. We want parents to gain confidence in their ability to influence their children's problem behaviors. We want parents to establish clear rules and expectations for behavior. That means that when they did the research on this program, they're going to be measuring those outcomes in their research study. Okay, so when we evaluate the research, we better be looking for those outcomes. Did they see positive effects on those particular outcomes? Because that is what this program was designed to address. Okay, then we have our intermediate outcomes, and of course, our long-term outcomes are that initiation of substance use, reduced frequency of violence and delinquency. So again, if I have long-term research done, which almost all evidence-based programs are going to have, they're actually going to have not just the research on the parenting behaviors and the skills around fear refusal, but they're going to show that actually this, so when they got those skills down, then long term we saw actual reductions in substance use or delayed substance use initiation. Okay, so this is basically helps us understand exactly what the research should be and how this all works. Okay, here's another example. This program is called Project Towards No Drug Abuse. So this one is a substance misuse prevention program for youth who have started using substances. So this is more of an selective or indicated prevention program. Okay, we're going to look at that program's mechanism for change. You can see what's there. There's 12 lessons taught. It tells me who my target audience is, 14 to 19-year-olds. It even tells me I shouldn't have more than 30 students in a group. By the way, with questions, I'm going to take at the end, so I'm not ignoring you. So we see what they're getting out of it. The goals: stop or reduce the use of, and here's what it says: cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana, and hard drugs. So this is my targeted outcomes. It's telling me what they're trying to address in this program. They're also looking at reducing weapons and carrying weapons. Okay. So you can see how that works. When I go to the program modalities, I can see what are the specific lessons, what are the topics, and then we're looking at the proximal outcomes. So again, in the research, this is what they're going to be evaluating, those things in purple. I'm going to be seeing at the end, was I successful in my meeting my learning objectives? That's kind of, those are the things in purple. And then the orange, those targeted risk and protective factors. So you can see in here we have like norms favorable to drug use, favorable attitudes toward antisocial behavior, low perceived risks of drug use. So I want the students to understand what the risks are of using these substances. I want them to have improved relations with pro-social peers. So I want them to be understanding why they should hang around kids who are making good choices. Okay, so again, in the research, I want to be able to see positive outcomes on these risk and protective factors. This is what the researchers are going to be measuring in their surveys. This is what they're going to be asking the students. Do I see changes in these things? And now later on, I'm going to be asking about actual substance use to go back to, do I see changes in the cigarette, alcohol, marijuana, and hard drug use that I said I was going to be addressing? So you can see their research again. Somebody put together this logic model. They pulled these numbers from some of the research. We're going to understand how we need to go back and look for ourselves how to determine whether or not we believe what's being told to us about these programs and the evidence. Okay. All right. The second one is readiness for dissemination. This one's pretty straightforward. Is there organizational capability to support others that are interested in implementing it? Evidence-based programs, like you can do the research on it and show that it's amazing. It shows, like those percentages that we just saw in the last example. Okay, guess what? Once you start getting that out there, people are like, how can I do this? I want to do this program in my school, or I want to do this in my community. So whoever develops this then needs to be ready to help other people implement it. That means it needs to have a manual for the facilitators so that it has that standardized approach, and then all other materials. So a lot of prevention programs for students have games, they have activities, they have other like materials that are specific to that program. So they might have posters, they might have videos. Okay, so they need to make those things need to be available to the people that are going to implement it. So they better be ready, because once they get that research out there and people see that it has positive effects, then people start asking for it. So they better be ready for that and have the capability and capacity to help with that. And the other big part of that is, as you guys are probably aware, most evidence-based programs do require that you go through their training. That is partly how they maintain standardization, and they ensure that anybody that gets access to their manual, for example, is going to be out there implementing that program with fidelity, and that they know kind of what they're doing. Because if people don't know what they're doing and they're out there implementing the program, that makes their program look bad. So let's say somebody hasn't been trained and they're out there implementing the program willy-nilly. There's not a lot of structured support for them implementing it. They do some evaluation and they don't show the same outcomes. They're not showing the benefits from the evaluation. Well, that makes that program look bad. And funders are like, wait a minute, I don't understand what's going on. This is an evidence-based program. Why aren't you getting the same results? It's because there's some issue with the implementation. So the training and the technical assistance provided can really help with making sure that it's standardized. So an example I have here, life skills training. If you're familiar with that curriculum, first of all, you see what's up there. They have both manuals for the facilitators. So they have a manual that they follow. It's very scripted. So facilitators know exactly what they're supposed to say and do. And there's a student workbook. So the students are following along. Every student gets the same information. And they now have online content as well that teachers can use to supplement the workbooks. So it has a place on their website to order the program materials. They're going to tell you how much it costs. They're going to be ready to ship that out to you when after you sign up for a training, if training is required, or in some cases, you can just order the materials directly from the program developer. But the point is, they're going to have something that looks nice, it looks professional, it's ready to be shared with the world. Okay. Also, this technical assistance and training. So they have different trainings you're going to be looking for, like, do they have current trainings? Some programs developers and or dissemination, like sometimes they sell it to a company and the company manages the training and technical assistance and providing the materials, because the program developer's like, I got other programs to develop, I don't want to keep working, I don't want to deal with this. So they'll actually pass it off to a company to manage that process for them. So like Channing Beat is an example of a company that does that for a lot of different prevention programs. So, so they have these trainings. They're oftentimes they're coming from, in this case with Life Skills Training, National Health Promotion Associates is the entity that provides the training for this. It's not the person that developed the program, but it's the people that they put in charge of doing that. Okay. Another example, this is interesting. This actually comes out of Iowa State University's extension system, the Strengthening Families Program for Parents in the 10 to 14. This is an evidence-based program. You'll notice that it was a Blueprint's promising program. And I just realized not too long ago, I went to the website to look up something and I saw this unfortunate message here, which is that it will sunset this program effective June 30th, 2026, which means if you see their note there, will materials continue to be updated? No, they're not going to revise, update, or reissue any materials. So basically anything that you have now is what you're going to have. Can I purchase additional materials? No. What it means is after June, they're not going to, like, no new people can do this program. They're not going to train any new people. You're not going to be able to order the materials. So that's sad. It's an evidence-based program. It has the research behind it that shows that it works. It's on Blueprints, but I have to make sure that, again, it's a lot of work to maintain this. They have to have people that are just in charge of the trainings and just in charge of sending out those materials. And apparently they decided we just don't want to do this anymore. And that does happen over time. Okay, so that's something that's really important. All right, next we're going to get into the evaluation quality. We're going to talk about study design. This is where I'm going to get a little technical on you guys, so I hope you're ready for this. This is a little bit of, like, probably a graduate level a class here. So here we go. Study design, the stair steps of quality. All right, so at the base of our steps here is what we've talked about already. It's based on a theory and research on those risk and protective factors, but it has not necessarily had that rigorous evaluation done. This is according to Blueprints tier. This would be considered not certified. So they have that designation. It goes not certified, then promising, model plus. So if something is not certified, it means it doesn't meet their standard of at least being a promising program. I'm going to show you later how to find those programs that are in this bucket on their website. I had to look to find that. This tells you, like, if you're looking for a specific program and you don't see it as a model or model plus, it's there. If they've reviewed it, it's just going to be, it's going to meet this, it's going to have this label. It's not certified. Okay, next, at least 2 high-quality quasi-experimental evaluations with positive effects. So quasi-experimental evaluation means there's some sort of natural control group. It means that we've done an interrupted time series design where I allow the group to serve as its own control by collecting baseline data on them, multiple points, to see what the trend is. Is the trend going up? More kids are using. Then I do my intervention. What does the pattern look like after that? And I see that over time. So there's some ways, if you don't have a control group, you can get pretty decent results that show that what you did was as a result of your intervention. But the gold standard is going to be a randomized controlled trial. Obviously, we want to see positive effects from either of these, so that kind of goes without saying, that they've seen improvements in their targeted outcomes. Okay. In terms of the Blueprints tier, if they meet this criteria here, it's a promising program. So this is what's the sort of basic thing they need to have in terms of the study design and evaluation quality, in addition to the other 2 things that we talked about, being the design, program design, the program mechanisms of effect. All that makes sense, and it's ready to be disseminated. And then in addition, they have one of these study designs with positive effects. All of that together will create a promising program on the blueprints tier. As we go up this to the next step, we're going to be looking for long-term positive effects that are sustained for at least 12 months. Okay, that's their standard. So I'm looking for, again, if they haven't initiated substance use right after the program is taught, I'm going to that research has had to follow those same kids again for a year, same exact kids. Next year, ask them again, have you started using alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, vaping, asking those questions. They're going to see what happened. If we see that they're still not using the substances, we've sustained that positive effect for a substantial amount of time. In kid years, that's 1 year is a pretty long time. Okay. There is research that has on interventions. It's really cool if you are into that have shown the effects can last into young adulthood. Really, what we're looking for is delaying the initiation of the substance use, because we know that typical trend is more kids are going to initiate as time goes on. Like with alcohol, for example, we see from like freshman year to senior year, if you ask kids, the same group of kids, more of them are going to have initiated by the time they're seniors. That's typical development. But what we're looking for with this research is, do we see them not initiating until like 12th grade as opposed to 10th grade? So we've delayed the initiation, or if they are are they using less than kids that didn't get the intervention? So frequency, quantity, and then age of initiation are all important things that we're looking at to determine whether or not we have the positive effects. All right, as some of you mentioned when I asked the initial question, findings are replicated in multiple high-quality studies. So again, one of the types of studies that we're talking about here, it's not just pre-post surveys. That's not what we're talking about with different groups. Okay, so it's actual research studies with control groups or some sort of natural control group if it's a quasi-experimental design. So findings need to be replicated. I need to see that in multiple studies, I'm seeing the same positive effects on those same outcomes. Okay, in terms of blueprints tier, this is where we get to model program. That's the level where they determine it to be a model program. All right, so what's the magic ingredient that makes it Model Plus? Does anybody want to take a guess? What's that one thing that puts it one level up? Anybody have a guess?
Is it that folks can do it without needing like God. Nope. Y'all guess.
Okay. 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 All right, sustainability. So that's definitely something that is looked at. Okay, that's a good one. Is it replicable outside of a lab or the controlled setting? All right, so what you're getting at, Jessica, is the difference between efficacy, and effectiveness. So efficacy is in a controlled study. Do I see these effects? Effectiveness is in the real world. Do I see these program effects? So that's a really good point. Most programs have not had effectiveness studies done on them. They're almost always efficacy studies. So there's not enough that have that. This is a hard one. This is a hard one, guys. So unless you were cheating going to the Blueprints website, it's going to be tricky to. But those are really important. Those things that you said. All right. What they're looking for is there one of the replications done by someone else, so not the program developer. A lot of times when programs are being researched, the program developer is part of the team that's involved in the project, in the study, okay? Because they're helping to guide the implementation side of it. They may also help develop the measures because they are most familiar with the program and the content. So they're involved in like, what questions should we ask the kids about to determine whether this works? All right. So what Blueprints is looking for this Model Plus designation is, did somebody else later on come and do a high quality study and see the same results? So in other words, you don't have someone who's biased, has something to gain from seeing those positive results. Because a lot of times, as much as they don't want to be program developers, if they know that like as soon as they get these positive effects from multiple studies and they've sustained it over time, they're like, score, like I can make so much money off of this because now I can sell this into perpetuity and sell it off to a company, and they're going to get it out there for me, and I'm making money without having to do anything else with this. So there's a lot to potentially gain. In addition to, there's a lot of egos in the prevention research field. So having a program that's an evidence-based program is something that, every prevention scientist is like, they want that. They want that on their CV. So having somebody else that has done this study and evaluation is what they're looking for to demonstrate that the results are less likely to be biased. Okay. But again, the things that you guys talked about, the effectiveness doesn't work in the real world. It's like, with a medicine, it works like perfectly well, or 99% when it's taken exactly as directed. But how many people take medications exactly as directed? Oftentimes not. So how well does it work when it's just done with the messiness of real world implementation? That's really important too. It's just we have fewer studies on that. And obviously, the longer the results are sustained, we would definitely give them additional checks on that. But as far as blueprints go, this is their standard. Okay. Okay. So which tier do you think has the most programs? You think it's promising, model, or model plus? Okay. All right. Yes. All right. And why? You guys are correct. Okay. You guys are correct. So when we look at this is from the Blueprints website. Uh-huh. Yes. Okay. So look at what we have here, guys. There's only 19 model and model plus out of 116 programs. 19 of them are considered model or model plus, and 97 are considered promising. All right, and you guys are onto it. So less rigorous standards, and because it is absolutely hard to get that evidence. And part of that is because one of the issues that we have in the field of prevention science is that it is when a lot of the programs were developed, it was in the 90s, and there was the big issue of the day was we got to keep kids from doing drugs. So there was a lot of concern and care about it within the federal government. So the National Institute on Drug Abuse was like, okay, we need programs. We need programs. So they're putting a lot of money to do the research. Now, if I'm like, I need to do another evaluation of a program to make sure it's evidence-based or to study it in the real world conditions, the NIDA says, yeah, actually, that's not very innovative. We're not going to give you money for that. Or the people better, more, it's more the individuals who are reviewing them. They're like, one of the things you have to demonstrate is that your project is innovative. Well, it's not very innovative to do a replication study on a program. So the problem is it's gotten a lot harder to do replication studies, which means that in a lot of cases, unless they get external funding somehow, because randomized controlled trials that have enough participants to actually show significant findings, and using the best in study design, it's going to be very, very difficult to get the funding to do those replication studies. So that is one of the big reasons why, unfortunately, we see that most of the programs are in the promising category. It's not because they're not good. It's not because they don't have the potential to be model programs. It's a lot of it is because there's just not the funding and financial backing and resources to do the work to raise it up to that model or model plus level. So unfortunately, that is the situation. So I guess I say that, that's partly why you have to look at the research, which we're going to do in just a minute, so that you're able to determine what you think. Where do you think this program is? And we don't want to just rule out a program because it's promising. We want to say, it's like we don't want to just say, oh, well, I only want to do model programs or model plus programs because that has the strongest evidence. That's not, it's true in like, yes, factual wise, but not necessarily true in terms of how well the program works. It's just sort of the what's been able to be done with that particular program. Okay, so you guys already figured out the why on that. Let's talk about income. Or sorry, not income. Let's talk about impact. Okay, shows the desired effects on majority of intended outcomes. This is where I need to look at the research article to see what wasn't significant. So I'm going to give you an example of that in just a sec. Impacts can be attributed to the program. In other words, the researchers controlled other key variables so that we can feel pretty darn confident that the effects that we're seeing are because of the intervention and not some other external factor that was happening at the same time that created those impacts. Example I like to give, if we don't control for something else that's happening, let's say in a community, I'm doing a study and I have two, like multiple schools in one community. Let's say there was a drunk driving accident that occurred and a student was killed. Okay. Now, the student was killed in neither of the schools that are participating in my project, but it's well known in the community that everybody hears about it. Okay. And then I have an intervention group that got my program, and I have a control group that didn't get my program. But guess what? That made it real for those students. So now they had a third thing, or there was another thing that impacted their behavior, which was, oh, this is scary. I understand now that there's real consequences of drinking and driving. Therefore, I see that in both my intervention and my control group, I have less drinking in that time frame, but it wasn't because of the program, it was because of that extra thing. So I want to be able to control that. So what I would hope to see if I've randomized this is that in my intervention group, even though that thing happened, I still see less substance use in my intervention group. Even though I see less in my control, I still see even more or less in my intervention group because they had that additional content and learning. Okay, I hope that made sense. Okay, and then the third thing we're looking for is that they had no harmful findings or iatrogenic effects. Iatrogenic effects is a fancy word for harm, anything that happened, that negative things that could have happened. For example, negative social contagion. Let's say you have a program that's for students who have gotten in trouble or who have all started using substances. You get a bunch of kids like that together, they might be negatively influencing each other. Okay, we might actually see increased substance use if I have a program that is designed to be implemented in that way, because they're all like, yeah, this is stupid, we're not going to pay attention to this, we don't believe this, instead of them being kind of going up to the standard of students who aren't using. It's like everybody is sort of like, kind of in this together and having those same negative views about what they're learning. All right, that's an example of an iatrogenic effect. So anything like that is going to automatically like kick it out. It will definitely not be able to be evidence-based if we see anything like that happening in the research. Okay, so question for you guys. Should you assess an evidence-based program's impact before you decide to use it? And if you say yes, how would you do this? And while you guys are typing those answers in there, best practices or resources for preventing iatrogenic effects. Yes, I would look at best practices. There are like lots of different articles out there, prevention science or implementation science articles that address best practices for implementation of different types of prevention programs. So as an example, there are some cases where they've tried to use peer mentors to teach lessons or to help teach lessons, and they found that that does not work. So there's research on different modalities or different methods of teaching, how the group size, the types of audience, all kinds of things like that. So you're going to need to dig into that research and look for those best practices. But they do exist. And ideally the program developer is going to provide that information to you in a training. They're going to say, we've learned or research shows that this should not be implemented this way. And a lot of times that's why in the trainings they tell you that information so you don't have to do that work yourself. They tell you like this should be done with a group of no more than 10 students because probably someone has tried it with 20 and they found it didn't work as well. So that's why they're telling you it should be done with 10. And also, like, that's why they're saying do it with kids that are ages 10 to 13 and not 18-year-olds because somebody's tried it and it didn't work very well. So people have tried probably all the things. And the way the program developers are telling you to do it, it was how it was designed. And then also, lots of things are tried over time, and they're the ones that learn what people have tried and what doesn't work very well. All right, so answers. Reviewing their methodology, scale, and how many times it's been replicated successfully and unsuccessfully. All right, very good answer. Find data from schools that have tried it. Okay, so if you can, yeah, that's awesome to get information from people who have actually used it to find out if they're doing it in the way that you want to, and how did it work for them. And then looking at data that shows effect for groups similar to the groups you work with. Okay, all good answers. Okay, so let me talk about that a little bit. What are you going to look for when you go back? So this is what you're going to look for. Which outcomes were significant in the analyses? Were findings for your outcome of interest consistent across studies? So if your funding is for, let's say it's specific to vaping, it's like to prevent vaping or marijuana use. Did this program consistently showed decreases or delayed initiation in marijuana use or decreased frequency of use? So I need to know exactly what their findings were for marijuana. If that's what I'm trying to prevent, that's what my funders are asking, or that's what I told my funders I would do. I want to make sure that this program has been shown to reduce marijuana. Okay, alcohol, cigarettes, like whatever your outcome is, go back and make sure that it's consistent for your particular substance that you're trying to prevent. Another really important thing, are there subgroup differences? Gender, age, so this kind of gets at the point you want to see that the effects are in groups similar to who you're working with. Lower income groups, rural versus urban, or a neighborhood type that you're addressing, older versus younger youth, higher versus lower risk youth, those that have initiated versus never used substances. Those are all different subgroups that the researchers may have, they may have done analyses to determine whether or not their program is just as effective for all racial groups, for boys and girls, for urban versus rural, or older versus younger. So that's the information that we want to look for. All right. So I'm going to show you where you can find this. So outcome section of the Blueprints Reviewer website. So if you go to the Blueprints website and you go to you find the outcome section of the program description. So scroll down a bit, you'll get to the outcomes. You can expand that. And this is what we see. So this is for the Towards No Drug Abuse program, which I showed you their logic model earlier. So they lay it out for you. Study 1, 2, 3, 4. It gives me the citation for the study, so I can actually look those up myself if I want to. And what it shows me is hard drug use prevalence rates at 1 year, 2 to 3 year, and 4 to 5 year follow-ups. So they had really long-term follow-up data in this particular study. Alcohol use prevalence at 1 year follow-up among using alcohol at baseline. What do you not see there in what do we not see? We say hard drug use. Hard drug use is often like cocaine, heroin, those types of drugs. Okay, let's look at the next one. Hard drug use study 2. Hard drug use at 1 year follow-up. Alcohol use at 1 year follow-up. Then they also had weapon carrying. All right, it's not until study 3 that I get 30-day tobacco and hard drug use at 2 year follow-up. So if my interest is tobacco prevention, I'm not seeing that in their effects, in their outcomes for study 1 and 2. In study 4, again, it only says hard drug use. So that means that if I'm interested in looking for a program that's on cigarette use or tobacco use, this might not be what I'm looking for because that particular outcome is not consistent across the various studies. Okay, another way to do it is to go to the original research article. So I did this work for you guys on this one, but this is an example of how you could do it. So I went to one of their references, so the research article, and here's what it said. They did not find significant effects for marijuana or tobacco use. We just saw that in the blueprints page, but let's see what the researcher said about this. It says, at 1 year follow-up, the program led to a significant reduction in hard drug use and reduction in alcohol use among pretest users, but no reductions in marijuana or tobacco use. And if you go further down, it says it is not certain why behavioral effects were not achieved on cigarettes and marijuana. They have some explanations in their discussion, but basically they don't know why. They expected to see those those results, but they didn't. So it's just kind of interesting. But I won't know that, and I won't have these insights until I go back to the original article. So it's more work, but when you're trying to select a program that you're going to implement for years and invest in this program and really understand, you want to understand what kind of impact you can expect to get from it, and part of that can only be done by really digging into the research. I'll give you another example. So if you're, again, on the Blueprints website, if you go down to they have these little menus that you can expand. One of them is a subgroup analysis details little menu thing. So I pushed the plus on that, and this is what I saw. Okay, it says subgroup differences in program effects by race, ethnicity, or gender. Okay, so that's what it's telling me. Study one, they look for subgroup differences by gender. Guess what? They found significantly stronger effects for males than females. Okay, they found within subgroup program effects by gender, significant benefits for males, but not females. What does that tell me? And then look at the other ones. I won't read them to you, but look at the other ones. Tell me what you think this means. What would you take away from those subgroup analyses if you are interested in this program? Go ahead and you can type it in the chat. Okay. All right. Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's not as effective. What the data tells us when we go back to the research is that it's not as effective for people who are not male, um, or so on the white, it's basically just giving us those demographics. So this is actually not they're just telling us like who is in these studies broken out by the ethnicity there. So it tells you that actually they had a pretty diverse population that they were doing the research with there. So you see it's like high percentage of Hispanic Latino students there, and some Asian. So they have a pretty good mix actually of ethnic groups, racial ethnic groups there. So they did not test for groups on any other differences there. Uh, so good question on that. They, as much as they can, I think they're really just trying to point out what was found. I think that, these studies are peer reviewed. So obviously, I don't think that this goes back to like the quality of the research and the peer review process. So in looking at the design, they're going to have to determine whether or not the peer reviewers would have determined, hopefully, whether or not they feel like they could actually make those statements, whether they were justified in coming to those conclusions that it was not effective for the different groups. But it's a good question, and sometimes it's more exploratory, and they're just kind of wondering, well, is this as effective for boys versus girls or different racial ethnic groups? And these types of analyses aren't done as often, probably for the reason that you're suggesting, that they weren't set unless the design was set up to do that. It's difficult sometimes, but this is just something to pay attention to because yeah, if you're working with a primarily female audience, that's your population, then that's going to be this may not be the program for you. But you will never know that from just looking at all, this is evidence-based. Yes, it is, but let's dig further to see really who it works best for. Okay, some other considerations. We're wrapping up here. Some other considerations when selecting an evidence-based program. I just wanted to cover some of these other things. So what you're looking for is, are materials available for your intended audience? So if I work with Spanish speaking families or students, for example, or for the Spanish, that's a lot of who I deal with, so I care a lot about that. Are the materials available, or have they been studied with this audience? Sometimes they're just translated, but they've not been culturally tailored in any way, or they've not been adapted, and there's been no evaluation on the adapted or translated versions. So I don't actually know if they're effective. So an example is there's a program called this Strong African American Families program, which was an adaptation of the strong strengthening families, sorry, program, but they did it obviously with African American families. It was designed for that. They actually did research on that program. So that's an example of an evidence-based. You can find that one on Blueprints. So one other thing you want to pay attention to are materials or mode of delivery outdated. Workbooks, life skills training, I love it. It has amazing evidence, but it uses workbooks, and that is not super cool for kids these days. Okay. So nowadays, like workbooks, like you want me to read words on pages, you want me to write things on paper, like that's just, that's super weird for kids now. Videos, when they use videos, those videos can look outdated after they're created because it can take over a year to just complete the videos, edit, get them ready for dissemination. So by the time they're out there, it's like, oh gosh, we don't use that iPhone anymore. We're on iPhone, 25, and this is iPhone 20. And people notice this stuff. When was the last update made? Pay attention to that as you're looking. What kind of training is required? Are the trainings regularly offered? Okay. Or are they do they have a training once or twice a year? That's going to be difficult if you're trying to get a new program going and you can only get trained, the training's required, but you can only get trained once or twice a year. That's going to be really challenging. So check that out. When do they have trainings? All right, here's something I want to share with you before we wrap up. We always want to see if there's been any subsequent research. Blueprints does not have the capacity, those reviewers and those other entities that review programs do not have the capacity to continually look and reevaluate programs. They try to stay up on it, but it's difficult. So you need to do your own work on this. So is it worth doing it is worth doing a quick search. I'm going to give you an example. There's a program called Project Alert. Okay, Project Alert was a program that had a substantial amount of research on it. It had multiple it had multiple randomized controlled trials evaluating it, which all seemed to show that they had positive effects. Okay, this is what it stands for: Adolescent Learning Experience and Resistance Training. It was on the Blueprints website. Okay, a long, 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 long time ago. So what happened? You can check it out. This is their website, projectalert.com. Outcomes. If you go there, I'm going to show you what it tells you. This is from their website. Project Alert is an evidence-based curriculum. Okay, as they say, meaning statistics and long-term survey research to find Project Alert success. Unlike most other programs, Project Alert has been and continues to be thoroughly tested in multi-year, multi-community studies. and they say it's scientific validation. And they're trying to tell administrators and school staff, they're saying, because of this, we know that when you deliver it, you're gonna have a positive impact on those kids and the results are gonna last. Okay, it's proven. All right, now there was research that came out on this program. This is what it said. Taking into consideration our findings in conjunction with those reported earlier, should Project Alert be considered evidence-based? The answer depends on the standards of evidence used. They're saying, hey, all the programs that are all the research studies on this program, we believe are sound, have strong methodological rigor, and they're strong quality studies. Okay, they say the program effects yielded by these evaluations have been inconsistent, and our one positive finding related to 30-day alcohol use has not been replicated in any other studies. Okay, and then they also found that Project Alert was not effective when delivered to sixth grade populations. They recommend implementing it in seventh grade, but should there be that much of a difference? It's like totally not significant for sixth graders and works for seventh graders. There's not that much difference between the two. So interesting findings there on that it's like if you didn't dig into that research you wouldn't have known that. Now here's the thing, Blueprints took that off of their website, so you won't find, if you do a search for Project Alert in the search program search in Blueprints, you won't find it. So this is what I promised to show you later, was if you want to know if a program was reviewed by Blueprints and didn't make the cut to be a model, or at least a promising program, I found the place to do that. Okay, you have to look for it on their webpage, but they do have a search to determine whether or not the program was actually reviewed by them. Okay, so Project Alert is the program name. Their rating, inconclusive evidence. This is again from the Blueprints website. Okay, and it tells you the studies. It tells you about the studies that they used to make this determination. So this is just an example of how we can go from, this is an amazing program with all these effects, to actually, whoa, some new research came out. And when they looked at everything put together, they say, we don't stand behind this anymore because these results were not consistent across time and across studies. Okay. All right. The last thing I'm going to talk about is, okay, so actually, I thought Blueprints was being sunset. It was like it said that, but now it seems that it is not. As far as I can tell, it looks like it's actually active and back. So unless someone has heard something different, it looks like it was, and then now it's back. So I was like, oh, good, because it is really where people go to look for their programs. Okay, reviewing cost-benefit analysis is one of the last things. Oh, good. That's wonderful. Okay, so one of the last things we want to look at is the cost to implement versus likelihood of positive outcomes. So there's one more place that you can look for information, and this is Washington State Institute for Public Policy, or WASIP is sometimes referred to. That's the website there. Example, guiding good choices. I showed you their logic model earlier. So you can see what this is telling us is basically, they've done some cost benefit analyses that are, it's very complex kind of work that they do. You can go to their website to learn how they factor all these, like the costs and the benefits. So I'm not going to get into that. I just want you to know as a tool when you're looking at programs and data to help you decide on selecting your programs. Check this out. They're saying the chance that the benefits of implementing this program will exceed the cost is 51%. So if you have a 50-50 chance that when you look at how much it actually costs to implement the program, including like the facilitator, the space, the the other things, the material costs, the training costs, all the things that go into being able to implement this program. And then we look at what it prevented in terms of substance use cases, or like, developing a substance use disorder later. chance of actually having a net positive benefit, cost benefit, is 51%. So this is another thing that you might want to consider as part of your overall evaluation analysis of whether or not this is the program you want to implement. What is their likelihood? It ranges from 0%. So like we're pretty darn certain that if you implement this, you're not going to get a return on your investment. So the closer that number is to 100%, the more likely those effects are super strong. So it means that like and consistent. So based on all the things they've looked at, it means that you can feel very much more confident that what you're investing into this in terms of time, money, resources, everything is going to pay off. And obviously, when you're talking to funders or community partners, coalitions, schools, any of that, when you can give them that information, it's very it's reassuring, right? And so they had the example of like Boys and Girls Club mentoring, very low, very low. It's like 16% or something, if I remember correctly. It was under 20% was the likelihood of getting the return on the investment there. In terms of prevention. Now, does it create other positive benefits? Absolutely. It's about the outcome that you're interested in. So you always have to kind of look at that. It's not to say it's not beneficial for what it might be for a different purpose for a different outcome. So that's the other thing to consider there is what are you trying to prevent? What are you trying to address? And is it worth your cost for that particular outcome? All right. Last question for you guys, and then I'll open it up for questions from you. Do you think a program should stay classified as evidence-based forever? Why or why not? In other words, once I get on that blueprints list, should I be on there forever? Okay, I see a no. The content becomes outdated. I think there should be iterative reviews. Okay, things are always going to be changing. We have to adapt. Okay. All right. So as I gave the example with Project Alert, cultural context, yep. Economic factors, yes. Yep, yep, yep. This is the incentive for these program creators to keep reviewing and updating programs. Yep. And some studies can't be scaled, and those are also impactful. That's right. That is right. So, as I mentioned, sometimes it's not because their program doesn't work very well, it's that they don't have the resources to do that external replication. Um, okay, you're talking about, yes, that's right. That a good example of the norms and laws is marijuana use, right? It's legal in states, and so now how do I teach students about that? We have to change. The programs have to change. If the developers aren't updating their content, it's going to come across very awkwardly as they're teaching it. Okay. And very good example like DARE. Yes. There was research that came out about DARE and it was like, yep, that's not good. But then they revised DARE. They did more research. Looks more promising. I think it's still, the jury's still out on new DARE, I would say. But okay. All right, you guys. Good answers. Okay, I'm gonna, just to final review on everything that I just kind of talked about. So before selecting your programs, you're gonna look at your evidence level from wherever review group or entity you're looking at, quality of that evaluation. You get to determine that in addition to the researchers. The findings, dig into that, see what it says. What are the training requirements, licensing fees? How well does it fit your population? Cultural relevance, obviously, that's another key important factor for your audience that you're trying to address. Is it appropriate for them? Is there evidence for that supporting it? Staffing needs, implementation support, current relevance. We have to go back to that. That's kind of what we were just talking about. How it's taught. Is it online? Is it paper-based? Is the content up to date? If there are videos, are they up to date? Those are all things you're going to want to know before you say, yes, this is the program I want to go with. Okay, finally, time for your questions.
Wow, that was excellent. I'm going to drop a few questions in the chat that we got. Um,
Okay.
but loved that.
Okay. All
So
right.
Janice asked if
So,
there's a logic model generator. that folks
Okay.
recommend?
So when you say that, do you mean, Janice, are you talking about for you to create for your own program? Is that what you mean,
Yeah, so
Janice?
we have
Uh-huh.
a project that we've been working on for like a few years now that we think could be evidence-based, but um I would like to create a logic model. I remember using one when I worked at public health that like you would insert like your theories and your indicators and it would just kind of arrange it in a beautiful way. And I don't know if people, I don't mean like using artificial intelligence. I mean like something that will just help you arrange your logic model.
Hmm. So do you mean like to make it meaningful or just to make it like look nice? Like,
To make it meaningful and look nice.
okay, okay. Okay, all right, that's fair. Um, okay, so I am not familiar with anything like that. I've always whenever I've needed to do logic models, I actually like using PowerPoint for creating diagrams. I find that it's nice with like connecting lines and you can connect shapes really nice to make flowcharts in there. But there's no right or wrong way to create a program logic model. I would just say you can look on blueprints for different programs and look for their logic model. You'll be able to see a bunch of different ways that developers have created their logic models. Some, like the guiding good choices one, I can go back to that really fast so we can just look at them. Some of them are more like they look more like flowcharts and they really do help to show like, well, if we do this, then this, then this, then this happens. So this is more like the flowchart example. This one is a little less specific. So this one is just like these blocks, but all the information is there. I just have to work harder to kind of map it. So I think it's really nice if you can do something more like a flowchart with really showing like mapping exactly. In fact, I just did a training where I had people who were involved in developing programs go through um, going through like their program activities and how they led to the outcomes. So I actually created my own little and it wasn't like cool like this. It was just really just sort of like I do these activities and these lead to these outcomes and then this all leads to my long-term outcome. So that's a very long answer to say I don't know of anything and I would work through that on your own to really get clear on how you expect it to work. Like, what are the activities that you're doing? What for each of those? What outcome? What knowledge, attitude, belief, intention, behavior are you trying to change and make that really specific for each of the sessions or program activities that you have in your program? And then I would kind of work through it that way, really figure out the content and then worry about making it look pretty and deciding like how is this best represented? Is it a flow chart or should it be more, you know, like those blocked columns or I don't know. Hopefully that made sense.
Okay, we had another question from Eleanor asked, does Blueprint consider whether the studies were powered to detect subgroup effects?
Yeah, I kind of talked about that when we were in that section, and so my answer is yes, I think they do. It's really going to be considered in their peer review process. So before that article is going to get published, whoever was reviewing that, the peer reviewers are going to say like, I don't, you're not in a position to be able to say that. So they're the ones, the peer reviewers are going to be the ones that are really going to catch that kind of a thing. Then blueprints could also kind of look at it as well and then determine whether or not they feel like they're in a position to do it. I think use that with a grain of salt. I would always argue go back to the article, to the research itself, if that is of concern to you, and read what the researchers wrote in their articles about it. I would not just listen or read what is said on the blueprints article and then go, okay, that's my answer. I should do this or I shouldn't do this based on that. I would go back to get the context for what they were doing, how they did the study. So I would really go back to that so you can make the decision yourself based on that. Okay. And then let's see.
I don't have any other questions, but
There was one other question
what was it?
about strengthening families program. And you said, okay, Jessica asked,
Oh,
review again
Jessica,
where we
yes.
can find readiness for dissemination location. Okay. Um, so the answer to that, Jessica, is that anything that's on blueprints is either a promising or a model program is going to be have met that. That's the thing. At the time of review, it met that criteria for being available for dissemination. That's where you have to go back and check on the status because that review might have been done in 2005. Blueprints might have done their review in 2005, and a lot has changed in the last 20 years or, however long it was since they last reviewed. I don't know how often they go back in and look. They're going to look for new research studies. So if like a new study came out on it, they're going to update that. They're going to be looking for that, but they're not necessarily like staying up on all the program developers' websites to know what's going on with each program. So they would need to get that information from the program developer. The program developer would need to contact them and say, hey, can you update this on your website that this is no longer open to new people, but it's still going to be evidence-based because people can still do it. It's still going to be evidence-based for the people who were trained and have the materials. It's just that new people can't do it and get trained in it any further after that June date. So it's one of those really tricky things where it's like it's still evidence-based, but it's just not available to new implementers. So again, that's where you're just going to have to. I was very surprised about that too. So you just kind of have to do your own research there. Okay. And yeah, and Paula said Blueprints doesn't reassess on a regular basis. Okay. Any other questions?
So they don't reassess on a regular basis.
No. Oh, that's a question. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a
Uh,
question. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I thought it was a statement, Paula. Yes, they don't. I mean, they don't have the capacity. So they're constantly getting requests to you can go into Blueprints and just look at all the programs that they have reviewed that haven't met their criteria for being promising or model. They're constantly getting requests for reviews of programs. So they don't have time or capacity. I mean, I don't know what their staff is, but I'm guessing it's, like a few people, maybe, some grad students, and, they don't have a huge staff that this is their primary responsibility. So just thinking about that, it's like, yeah, they're going to have to get that information from the program developer. And that's not necessarily something that people remember to do is like, oh, we need to update the blueprint site, or we need to update all the different evidence-based databases that we're on. Okay, so are most evaluations happening through blueprints? Are they the gold standard? And what about other evaluations? What I would say is, so yes, if I can share something that I found that was really helpful, I'm gonna stop sharing this just because we have a little time. I found this website and I found it to be really pretty helpful. Let me stop sharing this and I'm gonna open up a web page really quick for you guys. Because I really was like, oh, it's shortcuts. I wasn't sure if I would have time to talk about it, but let's see, it's West. Yes. Virginia. So West Virginia Clearinghouse. So sometimes the government agencies will have their own clearinghouses. So I'm going to show you one that West Virginia had that I came across, and I found this to be really helpful. It did a lot of that work for me. Okay. All right. So this is called this clearinghouse is the Bureau for Behavioral Health. Bureau for Behavioral Health Clearinghouse. Okay. They have our beautiful SAMHSA continuum of care wheel there, and it's telling you it's to ensure that I mean, it's for West Virginia entities, but guess what? Anybody can use it. I'm going to search programs. So let's pick who has a program they would like to look up. Anybody want to put something in the chat that they're considering right now? I'm just going to put the name of it in the in the box. So, okay, familias unidas. All right, let's check it out. All right, now, okay, and oops, I spelled it wrong. Let me try spelling it right. Okay, so it didn't find that one. So that means that particular one it's not in this database. That does not mean anything. New dare. Okay, new dare. Let's try dare. Okay. All right, we see dares here. So let's look this up. Okay. So this is what it tells me last reviewed 2023. This is really nice. I haven't seen this. I don't know if I saw this on the website. The Blueprints website. Like this tells me so basically it's up to date, but as far as 2023 goes. So this is giving me just the basics about this. Manuals, yes. Is training required? Yes. Okay, it tells me all that stuff. Programmer cost, go to the website, all that. Here's references to the articles I can go look at. But check this out on the right. This is where I thought it was really, really helpful. So this gets a not supported by research rating. Um, okay, so if I go to the ratings information, sorry, just really fast so you can see what these are. So there's well supported by research, so they get a WS is supported, and it tells you basically this is their sort of promising model plus tiers. So this is what they use. So they have an unable to be rated, or they have an unknown, not yet assessed, and unable to be rated, not supported, promising, supported, and well supported. Okay. So just, again, similar, you can look at their criteria. That's what you want to do is be able to look at the criteria. So they actually looked across different clearinghouses, different reviews entities to come up with their rating. So they tell you what it is on each registry. So for example, on other registries, the California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse, not on their registry. Blueprints, not on their registry. Clearinghouse for Military Family Readiness, not on their registry. OJDP Model Programs Guide, no effects in more than one study. And then the WASIP website I talked to you guys about, it's found on their website, and you can get their information about what they found there. If I click that, are you guys still seeing this webpage did it go to the Washington State?
Yeah,
Are
it's the
you
Washington State page. That's
okay,
what we
cool.
see.
So I was able just to click right to this. So let's see what they tell me about this. Because I want to be able to find that table, that cost benefit table. Um, let's see here. Basically, it's in the negatives here. So I believe what it's showing me is that this is kind of really nice because it actually shows me a meta-analysis of all program effects from there. So these are all the outcomes, all the substance use outcomes. It's actually showing me from the research what the effect sizes were. So this is showing me like what was significant. Look over on this p-value over here. Sorry, I can't highlight it. So the very last one there, that p-value is telling me whether there's significant differences. Excuse me. I don't see any significant p-values. We're looking for something under 0.05 to be significant there. So chance the program will produce benefits greater than the cost is 46% for DARE. And I guess benefit cost models were done in 2025. The literature was reviewed in 2015. So that's just a way you can kind of put this all together to really, really evaluate the programs that you're interested for yourself and really decide what you think is best for you, because you can't always just go, it's a model program, yay, I'm using it. You really kind of do have to dig into the detail. I know we're out of time, but thank you guys so much for your engagement and your participation today.